Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. It is, of course, the Tea Party, the lunatic ideologues, the Republican senators and congressmen, and you know who, right? We've got Rand Paul on the one side, we've got Lee, we've got Bachmann, we've got a whole group of 70 to 80 in the House and a somewhat smaller group in the Senate who say they'll never vote for an increase in the debt ceiling. They will always vote to bankrupt the United States. Now, these are, to some degree, marginal backbenchers. On the other hand, they're getting rather numerous, aren't they, thanks to the money from the Koch brothers and such figures. So their verbiage served S&P as political cover for an attack on the United States, right? S&P did the sneak attack, but the Tea Party subversives provided a smokescreen for that attack. Now, the people from S&P can say, oh, no, we didn't make this up. We've got responsible members of Congress, important national figures, presidential candidates like Bachmann and others saying never. As a matter of fact, all the Republican candidates except Huntsman don't raise the debt ceiling. They didn't like the deal. So this is the prelude. That's what that played into the hands of S&P and the cabal of shorts waiting in the background, and we'll see about this. So the lesson of this is we're in a depression, not a recession. We're dealing with speculators, sharks, not investors. We're dealing with cartels, oligopolies, and monopolies, not markets. We're dealing with reactionaries, not conservatives. They're right-wing radicals, not conservatives. And the banks are bankrupt, not the governments. The banks are way more bankrupt than the governments. And the basic underlying premise of our time, either the national state will break the power of the zombie banks, the hedge fund hyenas, and their apparatus, including the ratings agencies, or the zombie banks, the hedge fund hyenas, and their hangers-on and clients, including the ratings agencies, will destroy the modern state, and they will destroy civilization. The breaking point is now coming soon. In other words, this will be decided historically one way or another. Now, let's just go back and reconstruct how this happened. The immediate background is QE2 is over as of the end of June. So the $600 or $800 billion dollars that the Fed was pumping into the bond market had come to an end. That's one factor. Again, these are bad programs, but they do prop up financial structures. They're designed to avoid panic, and to some extent they do, even as the economy in the background declines. The stimulus, the great Obama stimulus from the beginning of 2009, is now largely reported coming to an end. We had Meredith Whitney on CNBC this week saying the stimulus funds are ending. She's predicting the bankruptcies of many states and many cities based on the fact that money, about $500 billion, is no longer coming in to the states and the cities. That's what has been maintaining essential services in the meantime. Plus, of course, the lunatic austerity programs of Greece, of France, of Britain, of other countries. Italy today, the Italian cabinet in emergency session increased the value-added tax, a kind of very high sales tax. A solidarity tax on the rich, well, that's okay. Raising the retirement age, that's a very bad idea when you have so many manual workers, people working in construction and assembly lines. If we look at it, how did this then happen? Because of the agitation of the Tea Party fanatics, this put the great fear abroad in the world. So let's trace the evolution of all this, through some headlines in the Wall Street Journal. As of Saturday of last week, that is to say 30th to 31st of July, the Boehner bill squeaked through. That was this fake budget that Boehner had put up. Already on Saturday, July 30th, the business and finance section of the Wall Street Journal. For investors, cash is king. Washington stalemate spurs flows out of markets and into cash accounts. This is the prelude to the crisis because it means that investors, there are some, are afraid of the speculators. So the investors are basically afraid that the existing investments, including the benchmark Treasury bond, bill, and note, the bedrock of all world financial activity, as we see again and again, that this was now in danger. So what does cash do? The cash is afraid of bonds that might default. Well, the U.S. bond might default. Hey, if the U.S. bond might default, whose bonds might default? Hey, maybe Spain. And if Spain, since July 11th, maybe Italy. And maybe even France. We'll get to that in a minute. But the cash then flowed into Switzerland, into Swiss franc bonds, into German bonds. This is still the euro, but they're German bunds, and into Japan. So it meant that there was a big cash outflow out of Spain and Italy. And this set the stage for the crisis that emerged last week. On the Wednesday, August 3rd, Money and Investing, Wall Street Journal, Europe's banks retreat. Barclays is the latest to turn defensive as its CEO cites loss of confidence. And here we see that Barclays is under pressure. RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, selling sovereign debt. Deutsche Bank hedging exposure to Italy. Not far behind, HSBC, Santander, and more. Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, Credit Suisse, Barclays, all firing their workers. Then, Thursday, August 4th, remember the deal, so to speak, was agreed on. The deal was agreed on of Tuesday of last week. So now on the Thursday after the Tuesday, Wall Street Journal, Money and Investing, signs of stress on the rise across the globe. The Japanese or Swiss are alarmed by the amount of money flowing into their currencies. They've got to weaken their currencies. They also got reports in the background that European banks are trying to borrow dollars, especially French banks, and can't get them out of the New York money market because there's too much default risk on those European banks. And, of course, the default risk is determined by the speculators themselves through credit default swaps. As of Thursday, August 4th, almost a week ago, Wall Street Journal headline, Italy's woes weigh on Europe. Berlusconi resists calls for new measures. Anxiety spreads across the continent. So we have a chorus of hysterical austerity ghouls demanding the blood and bones of the Italian people. And then also on that Wednesday of that week, actually this is the day before, economic fears hit global markets. So this is the day after the U.S. deal, so to speak, the 12 tyrants that we'll get to. Economic fears hit global markets, and this is the Fed funds rate going up, the interbank rate in the U.S., bond yields in Italy and Spain spiking up. Treasuries by this time are back to the safe haven. They're a flight to quality. And the stock market is already diving as of last Wednesday. So that's the prelude, and you can see that it all has to do with the great fear unleashed, the new ingredient, beyond all the things you knew about Spain or Italy bonds, the new fear stoked by the Tea Party. People who loudly say they want to bankrupt the United States and don't care about default, well, that's the ticket price. The grief you're going through now is the ticket price of the Tea Party. And now let's just imagine, suppose they had driven the United States into default and bankruptcy. What you're seeing now is a Tea Party, a Tea Party in the sense of nothing compared to the 10 or 100 or 50 times the crisis that you'd be seeing if the U.S. had actually defaulted. So as of Monday of this week now, the week that's ending today, Friday, and again, we're recording here on the 12th of August, after the S&P downgrade of France, after the S&P downgrading of the United States, the question was, well, if the U.S. can be downgraded, then who else might be downgraded? What are the other AAA countries? Oh, France is a AAA country. Maybe they'll be downgraded. And then we'll see. After that, it goes to the EFSF, and it ultimately goes to Germany. And at that point, maybe somebody will realize that it's a world economic depression. Back in a minute.